2 games down in the Elite 8, and Florida and Duke have punched their ticket to the Final Four. It could be no other way. Give this video a like if you have spent as much time as me today watching college hoops, because this has been one hell of a day for basketball, especially if you happen to be the fan of a team that is probably going to be drafting one of these kids. And we'll talk about both those games. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff today. We're going to talk about those 2 games specifically. I watched both of them wire to wire. I definitely did watch the UConn Huskies. Shout outs to Paige Beckers setting an all-time record. We can touch briefly on that. No video for that. We will definitely talk about Khaman Malauch. We're gonna break down some film of Khaman Malauch and just maybe think about how generational could he potentially be as a defender, because my friend John D asked me yesterday, is he, he's mentioned a few times, does Duke have like 2 generational defenders? Is it just Cooper Flagg, or is Khaman really on that level? And I've always resisted calling Khaman generational defensively, but some stuff that I saw today was truly jaw-dropping. We're going to talk about that Florida Gators team, and we're going to talk about their lead point guard and just how incredible a performance he put up. And as I've been watching the entire March Madness, I got to tell you, as I dig deeper into the tape of some of these foreign prospects, the only regret that I have as a Raptor fan is that the Toronto Raptors do not have an additional first-round pick in this draft, because, Lord, they need it. They need it so badly, and I hope that they can find a way to trade for one, and I'll propose some ideas in terms of, how we might be able to do that. We're also going to talk about Colin Cowherd. And Colin Cowherd had some very choice words about Cooper Flagg potentially ending up on the Toronto Raptors and why he thinks this is such a disastrous fit. So we're going to talk about all of that. Give this video a like on your way in. Colin link is in the description if you want to call in and you're not a troll. I will ask, just for, while we are weeding out trolls, if you are going to call in, turn your camera on briefly behind the scenes, and then we can let you on. Certainly we can have a discussion about what you saw. Maybe you're seeing something that I'm not seeing, and I'm open to having a discussion about it. Okay, first and foremost, we got to talk about Texas Tech almost upsetting the Florida Gators. Now, there are, some NBA draft eligible players in this game, and I want to talk about some of them. So Darian Williams had a beast of a game. They could not stop him, and he was a huge part of how they took that lead in the second half, and why they were basically, I want to say 6-7 mistakes in a row away from potentially upsetting the team that a lot of people have winning the national title, which is the Florida Gators. I just absolutely love this game from Darian Williams. JT Toppin had a lot of struggles against the length of Florida. Now, Florida is an absolutely huge team. I don't think their centers and big men necessarily played well, but that size seemed to bother JT Toppin a lot. There was a lot of just shots that he missed. And man, going 0 for 5 in the biggest game of the season from the free throw line is really going to hurt him. Now, at the Buzzer Sports, love the content pen. Keep going. Still got to connect for more draft content. W to you if you end up free over the next 40-50 minutes and you have some observations, feel free to chime in, call in. Happy to have you on and have a 2-minute discussion, 5-minute discussion about what you saw. But for sure, I was very blown away by Texas's just ability to crash the glass, their ability to be physical, and somewhat miffed by Florida's inability to make an adjustment on Darian Williams and just how he was abusing them one-on-one on the block, right? They did make that adjustment a little bit later, but I don't think this game came down necessarily to what Florida did right as much as it came down to what Texas Tech did wrong. And it starts with back-to-back trips to the line, first for Darian Williams and then for JT Toppin, where Florida was, coming back slowly behind some huge plays from Walter Clayton Jr., who put up 30 points on 14 shots. And it just came down to making free throws, man. Free throws, turnovers, late game situational awareness. There was a play where Texas Tech pressed super hard. They almost forced a turnover for those of you who don't watch college basketball, it's a 10-second violation. Backcourt violation is not 8 seconds, it's 10 seconds. 30-second shot clock. My man, Chilltown Hoops, let us know that there used to be a 45-second shot clock in college basketball. I started watching college basketball when there's a 35-second shot clock, but nevertheless, 30-second shot clock, sped up the game, 10-second backcourt violation. It's at 21 seconds, and then Darian Williams commits the foul. So it's just like small things like that. It just costs you. And in a 5-point loss, I have a feeling that there's no team that's going to be sitting home missing, missing the Final Four, that's going to be kicking themselves harder than Texas Tech Red Raiders. But I do have to say, shout outs to them for their hustle and, how well they played this game. They played 37 minutes of great basketball and then played 3 minutes of some of the stupidest basketball you've ever seen. But let's, give some credit to Walter Clayton Jr. and the Florida Gators. They did not have the greatest game. Thomas Hoff, is it Hoff or Hawk? However you pronounce his last name, I caught it a few times, but it's a new name to me. He came off the bench and he just poured bucket on bucket for them. In the second half, he was huge. He ends up going for 20 points off the bench. They really needed him. And Alex Condon really struggled. Will Richard really struggled. Elijah Martin really struggled, but it was Walter Clayton Jr. And I got to give a big shout out to Walter Clayton Jr. 2 blocks, my man, 2 blocks. He had so many great screens in this game. He had just so many clutch defensive plays in this game. He feels a little bit bigger than what you would call like an undersized guard. I know he's undersized. Of course he's undersized, but he feels like he plays a lot bigger. And I could really see him playing himself into first round contention with this game because he was just everywhere. He was everywhere. He was composed. And it felt like, the true mark of a pro is, do you get better as the stakes raise? And he got better and better with every minute. And whether they were down 6, down 7, you never really felt him rattled. And they were down big. Like they were down double digits in this game. I'm gonna check myself on that, but they definitely were down double digits. They were down 10. They were down 10 in the second half. And this game was called. Like this game was over. For Vegas, this game was over. Look at the win probability. Like Texas Tech was 94% likely to win this game with 3 minutes to go with the score at 75-66. That's what I said. They played 37 minutes of great basketball. Okay. Military man saying, Penn, would you rather Cade or Cooper, Mobley or Cooper, JJJ or Cooper, Şengün or Cooper, Nas or Cooper, AD or Cooper, Sabonis or Cooper, Fox or Cooper, Maxey or Cooper? For Raptors, by the way. Wow. Cooper. I would take Cooper over all those players. Jesus. Okay. You could have just asked me how high I am, Cooper Flagg. Okay. We could talk about, we'll talk a little bit more about Walter Clayton Jr. later in terms of draft targets for the Raptors. We got to talk about this Duke Blue Devils game. Now, Alabama came off of beating BYU in the previous game. They shot 49% from 3. They put up like 51 threes against the BYU Cougars. And I think a lot of people were wondering, is Alabama going to be able to do that against Duke? A big team with a 7'2" anchor inside, with Cooper Flagg, who can switch 1 through 5 on the perimeter, with big guards like Sion James and Tyrese Proctor, and a guy who's a little bit slow and maybe doesn't get the reputation that he does, but who's commendable defensively in Con Kneppel. Are they going to be able to do that with their undersized backcourt, specifically Mark Sears, who was hot as hell in the last game? I think he shot 10 for 14 in the last game. And the answer was no. Cooper Flagg hit a 3 to open this game up. The score was 3-0. The Duke Blue Devils never led in this game. It was not close. It was supposed to be close. A lot of people thought it would be close, but it wasn't close. And just when you thought maybe some of the errors and some of the mistakes that, Duke was committing would open the door for a hot shooting team like Alabama to come back, it was the defense of the Duke Blue Devils that consistently put them through. Now, per my recollection, I don't think I've seen a single game since February where Cooper Flagg has played and Duke has not cracked 80 points. If you watch enough college basketball, you'll understand just how exceptionally rare that is. And today, it's weird to say their 85 points were largely a result of their defense, but that's exactly what it was, because their offense was not super sharp. And their prohibitive favorite, for National Player of the Year, Cooper Flagg, went 6 for 16. 6 for 16, 16 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 block, 4 turnovers, including 2 very egregious turnovers very late, including a lot of near turnovers with his very loose, albeit, somewhat fluid looking, but very loose and very pokeable handle. And Cooper has a long, long way to go. Long way to go. But there are intangibles that don't show up on the box score with Cooper Flagg that a lot of those players that you were, alluding to, Cade, etc., just don't have. And, it comes down to the switchability, his screening, his ability to switch his hips, his ability to recover, his ability to stay composed in these like really, really tight moments and not lose composure, his ability to charge up his teammates. Like, he is just like the ultimate hype man. Everything I liked about Scottie Barnes coming out of FSU is what I like about Cooper Flagg. A lot of the same stuff. And I'm going to keep comparing these two players because I know it's not obvious to some people who are, Cooper fanboys, but it is very obvious to me that there are a lot of similarities between these two players in terms of just how they engage with their teammates, how they shift the focus of their teammates, in terms of how they set up their teammates. I don't think Cooper is necessarily the best passer in college basketball. I've heard that term thrown around a lot. I think he's an okay passer. I think he's a very good passer for his size. I think he's an exceptional passer. But if he was a point guard, you would think he's just a normal passer. But he's not a point guard. He is a 6'9", very bouncy, exceptionally long, exceptionally coordinated, very agile, high motor player who just tries. And they brought it up, 3-4 times on the broadcast. And I feel like people really, really need to just register this. He's supposed to be in high school, y'all. He's doing this against grown-ass men, who are 21, 22 years old. I understand. It's not the pros. It's not NBA. It's not EuroLeague. And maybe against, that competition, he would get exposed a little bit more with his handle. It would get, result in more turnovers. Maybe he wouldn't be as efficient offensively. Maybe he wouldn't be as physically imposing, but he's got wide shoulders. He's got exceptional work ethic. This is a 17, who just turned 18 in December. And the fact that he and Khaman have put together this front court that I honestly believe the Washington Wizards would struggle like hell to score against this team. I really do. Man. Alvin Smith saying, I'm crashing out. Why are you crashing out? Did you have money on this game? Maybe. Well, if you had money on this game, I feel sorry for you. But Cooper Flagg was not the only story of this game. Con Knipple, just how he steadies things. Missed the bunny at the rim for sure, but how he steadies things, how composed he is on offense, how remarkably shifty he can be, and how patient he is with his offense. What a good passer he is. A couple of dimes that he threw were just exceptional, just out of nowhere. He just found the angles, how well he processes the court. Pace is everything when it comes to perimeter players, and a player who can play at his own pace. That's what makes Austin Reeves so good at the NBA level. That's what makes Shea so good. I'm not putting Con Knipple in Austin Reeves and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander territory, but be for real now. When he had the basketball, you felt the most secure of any player on Duke. When he had the basketball, it was like, okay, we're going to get a good shot. We're going to get to the line. Yeah. I'm sorry, but I don't see Cooper as the first pick, let alone first round. He should be early second. You're so close to getting banned. Like, you're so close. Like, you're so dumb. It's not even worth talking about. But if you genuinely believe this, stop watching basketball, start watching cricket, because you're that dumb. Straight up. You might be like, bro, get help. Get some serious help. It's not debatable that he's going to be the first overall pick. He could literally break his leg in half right now, touch wood, and he would still be the number 1 overall pick. Stop overthinking this. It's not that serious. Okay. I think their guards did a great job. Tyrese Proctor continues to shoot exceptionally well, 7 for 10 from the field. We're going to talk about Khaman Malauch in the film breakdown, but their depth, it was decent. Isaiah Evans got into the game. I was really happy about that. 5 minutes, 2 points, got a quick hook. Caleb Foster got onto the court. He contributed a little bit, 5 points. Patrick Gongba, he was big, but you felt the difference. They like to give Kaman like fewer minutes because he gets gassed pretty quickly. It's not a conditioning thing. It's just a matter of stepping up to this level. But it felt like every single time Kaman went to the bench, yikes, man. It really felt like they started to attack. And it's not like Patrick is a small dude. He's 6'11. He is a good shot blocker, but he's not Khaman Malauch. Malauch changed angles. Malauch changed everything. Defensively, if you watch this game, legit, he was the Duke Blue Devils' best defender tonight. And I don't think it's that close. I think Cooper's great on that end. I think he has a lot more potential offensively right now. His game is a lot more polished, probably a lot more impactful. The passing is the big swing between those two prospects. But defensively, what Khaman Malauch did, and we're going to look at a few plays, specifically slowed down, where you're going to see that this is much more than whatever the hell you think he is, Hashim Thabit or, any bust, player that you can think of, Nerlens Noel or whatever. No, this is a completely different player. And, as much as his role is very, very simple at Duke, don't get it twisted. If he was playing for, maybe not Duke, like maybe if he was playing for a different team, let's say he was playing for BYU, let's say he was playing for, I don't know, Illinois, and he just had a more expanded role on offense, you could definitely dump it down to him on the block a few times. You see his touch? You see his touch? You're telling me you can't feed it down into the post and he can't do one hook? Of course he can. This is a guy with great touch. He hasn't been asked to do very much for Duke offensively, but I think at the next level, especially if he ends up in a good situation, he'll be asked to do a lot more slowly. Maybe a little bit of G League run for him would be great, to work on his expand his offensive game, shoot some more jumpers, etc. But right now, this is a team that seriously, if you had to bet your house right now, I don't see how you're picking against them to win the national championship. Even if you don't actually think they're going to win the national championship, I don't know how you're picking against them to win the national championship because they have been that dominant. And to do this to a team, and again, some people may not even rate BYU. I'll tell you 100%. In the last 11, 12 games of the season, BYU was basically a top 6 team in the country. I think they went 11-1. The only team that they lost to was the Houston Cougars, who are playing tomorrow and are prohibitively favored to win, and get to the punch their ticket to the Final Four. So it really does matter, when you play teams, who you are. And BYU was a very underrated, sneaky sleeper team to potentially make a Final Four run. And the fact that Alabama spanked them by double digits, and then they come out and they get spanked by Duke by 20, this is as clear a sign as I have seen that Duke really does have a chance to go all the way. And again, everybody wants to second guess their chances because they're young. They have a lot of freshmen. They have 3 freshmen who played major minutes for them, but these are not normal freshmen. Con Knippel, Khaman Malauch, and Cooper Flagg do not remind me of any freshmen. 2 of them are very young for their class. They just don't feel like freshmen to me. They have composure. And there was a lot of mention on the broadcast about Duke investing in meditation for these guys and, Japanese, 1% better everyday stuff. I love that Duke actually develops their players. And I just hope that all 3 of these players, Khaman, and Cooper, end up in situations where NBA teams do not ask them to do too much too early and that they continue that development because that is very important. And a lot of teams don't do it. So, okay, let's get to some film here. I'll take a very brief look at the team stats for this game because this shit is depressing. Duke shot 54% from the field and 46% from 3. Alabama, on the other hand, shot 25%, exactly half of what they shot against BYU, which is nuts, and 35% from the field. And believe me, the defense was everything. Duke outshot them from the line. They had more rebounds. They had more assists. They had almost as many stocks. They did have more turnovers. It's worth noting that a lot of them came late. And, they had more points in the paint. They held a 20-point lead. They never led in this game. This is as dominant a performance as you can get in terms of an Elite Eight matchup. Like this felt like something you might see in the first round of a tournament. This type of smackdown where the other team just does not register a run. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like the only run that Alabama had in this game was with like 3 minutes to go down the stretch on back-to-back Cooper turnovers, which was completely fueled by Cooper. It was like the dumbest passes, just projecting the pass and throwing the pass. It was completely self-inflicted wounds. And, you know, obviously at that point it was an 18-point lead. It wasn't gonna swing the balance, and then Duke ended up regaining composure. But the point here is at no point was this game in doubt. No point. 9-point game, 8-point game. It never felt like Alabama was ever going to overcome the sheer size of Duke. And, you know, if you're the Raptors, pay attention, because you're often a smaller team than your opponent. And I don't think that you have to be. So that was crazy. Okay, let's pull that off, and let's talk about Mr. Khaman Malauch, and we will also talk about okay. So first play here. I mean, just look at the length, right? Now, Khaman is going to get the block here, but understand how much work Cooper does here to actually get this block off, right? Again, deterrence allows Khaman to recover in time. And so my point here is, are there NBA teams that would struggle to score on these two inside? And the answer is 100% yes. There are plenty. Now, Khaman has crazy hands. Here, Tyrese Proctor just throws this up. Look at where this ball is thrown. I'm going to freeze it and allow you to just think about this for a second. Alvin Smith saying, military man, you're done. No, Alvin Smith, you are done. Adios. We don't need you. Okay. All right. Here goes. Do you see where this ball is? That he catches this and he throws it down is nuts. The catch radius is so large for this guy. It's a little bit like the Derek Lively stuff, right? It's just, I think he's better than Derek Lively, and that's saying a lot. Again, look at this. Just look at the hands. Okay. First of all, Con Knippel throws this pass. It is a really difficult pass. You can see the ball in the middle of the screen there. Look at how off target this pass is. Khaman still gets it. Okay. Now he does not get the alley-oop, which is probably the intention of that pass, but he regathers it. He loses his balance momentarily. If you know anything about athletes, you know that prior to the age of 21, athletes have all sorts of disadvantages when it comes to balance, and it tends to get a little bit better as you get older. But here, look at how off balance he is. Now he sees the basket right now, right? Sees the shot clock, has the patience to wait, and then gets it around. That's length, but that's also hand-eye coordination. Touch around the basket comes down a lot to hand-eye coordination. I do want to see the Mark Sears, Jalen Brunson comparisons end, though. Okay, now, to those of you who think Khaman is Hasheem Thabit can literally not do this in his wildest dreams. Okay, look at how he switches his hips here onto the perimeter player. Now, that's a very shifty guard who should, in theory, be able to blow right past a slow-footed 7-footer, except Khaman is not a slow-footed 7-footer. He gets down in his stance, deters the drive, forces the drive to the right by cutting off the left hand, and then, because he is so insanely intimidating, the guard just loses the basketball. He doesn't even need to poke it away. And then Con Knippel dives on the basketball as it's saved, and possession Duke. That's really crazy. That is really nuts. Okay. Now, this is another Khaman Malauch possession. Again, switched out onto the perimeter. Look at how well he does here. Now, he's deterring the guard. If I told you right now, just imagine for a second that he was 6'5", 6'6". He's actually doing a pretty good job for a 6'5" or 6'6" guard. He's on balance. He's in his stance. He's giving he's kind of deterring the drive and sort of deterring the shot. He's trusting his length. He's not getting himself into foul position where the guard can blow past him or force a foul. He's just trusting his length. He's extremely well coached here. And, he's got the hands up. So he's deterring the pass as well. Here, look, just watch. Okay, now Con is going to step up. Perfect switch. Now, Con does a great job here. Pump fake, pass. Now here, Mark Sears is going to split the double and look at who's waiting for him in perfect help position. Mr. 8'12", Khaman Malauch, who completely changes the angle on the shot. Again, look at where Mark Sears takes the shot and look who's in his way. Now, of course, Concaniple does a great job of bumping him last second. But when he sees Khaman loading up, he changes the angle of this shot to go a little bit higher. And because it goes too high, it actually ends up short. This is a play that Mark Sears has made 1,000 times in his life. The problem is he hasn't made it against a 7'2" guy. Okay. And I'm trying to understand who's crashing out now. Alpha Puff. Damn, you're crashing out. Who is crashing out? Daniel saying, Rob, who is Duke's biggest threat remaining in the tournament? I think you would have to say it would be Florida, but I think they are just so much. Florida can match their size a little bit. It'll really depend on how they deal with. It will really depend on how they deal with Walter Clayton for sure. Okay, so again, I thought he was great. Now we got to address the little elephant in the room, which is Colin Cowherd, and why he believes, for whatever reason, that the Toronto Raptors should not get Cooper Flagg.
Perfect would be maybe Chicago or Philadelphia or, hey, San Antonio with Wemby. Okay would be Utah. Great GM, great coach, a lot of draft picks. They got some players. They're going to be OKC if they land Cooper Flagg. They're going to be OKC. And Utah's a great NBA market. And then there's just god-awful Washington, Charlotte, Toronto, Sacramento. And so if Cooper Flagg, the odds are right now, it's mostly awful teams he's going to go to.
Okay, let's talk about this. Karen Hall, I appreciate that. I don't think you're going to get copyright for a 40-second clip, but I could be wrong, and in which case we'll get demonetized. I want to address this. Now, personally, I might be a little bit biased, but I'm informed. I have watched more of every single NBA team this year, specifically the teams that he mentioned, which I know he doesn't watch the Utah Jazz. You know that. You know he's not watching the Philadelphia 76ers. You know he's not watching the Brooklyn Nets. If I had a pop quiz with Colin Cowherd and I said, who is the Brooklyn Nets head coach? I would love to see him stumble through that response. He doesn't know. He doesn't know. One of my biggest pet peeves in covering the NBA is just the ignorance of how people speak with so much conviction about something that they have no idea about. Now, conspiracy theorists will tell you that there's no chance in hell that the Toronto Raptors could ever land Cooper Flagg. There's a lot of reasons for that. Let's break it down. Here's some reasons where, if you are a conspiracy theorist, Toronto cannot land Cooper Flagg. Reason number one, marketing. He is American. He is white. There's a lot of white people in America that really, really like white players. If you want any evidence of that, please consider the hype around Caitlin Clark. It's a really big deal to some segment of the American population who happens to be white that there be a really good white player in the NBA. Consider the hype that even some of these people really like Nikola Jokic. I know Jokic does not give a shit about, Republican Trump supporters. If you look at the base, if you consider the population, yes, Cooper Flagg is a very, very big deal in America. Obviously, Larry Bird, etc. Right? There's been a lot of players that fit that mold. Even if you consider like the hype that Christian Laettner got, shit. Christian Laettner, good player, not a superstar. So there's that hype component that if you're like thinking, if you think about all the great draft prospects, think about them. Think about all the players I'm thinking about. All those consensus number ones. Yao Ming, Tim Duncan. I'm going to go right back to 1995. Let's go back to 1992, actually. Shaq, Chris Webber. These are consensus number ones, right? Shaquille O'Neal, Allen Iverson. Sorry, I've already said Shaq. So Shaq, C. Webb, Tim Duncan, Allen Iverson. Consensus number one picks. Yao Ming, LeBron James. If we keep going, Greg Oden, Kevin Durant, probably both of those guys would have been number one picks in their own respective draft classes, but they went 1 and 2. Do you get the point that I'm making? Even if you want to talk Zion, there hasn't been a white guy. They're all black. Everyone was black. Blake Griffin, Victor Wembanyama, Paolo. Paolo was not a consensus number one pick. Cade was not a consensus number one pick. But the point is, there hasn't been a white player who's been mocked to go number one in my lifetime. The last guy that I can think of who was even mocked to go number one was a guy who used to play for the Minnesota Golden Gophers. And he ended up, Andrea Bargnani. Okay, there. Bargnani was white. But the whole racial implications of all of this, the national implications of all of this, given Canada and America's, the idea of Canada's lone team getting their American white superstar would be like a really big FU to brands and probably whoever represents Cooper, Nike, Adidas. I don't know who he signed up with. They probably wouldn't love it. So I get that from that perspective. There's also another perspective, which is Adam Silver is a Duke guy. This is a Duke prodigy. This is like Grant Hill, right? It's like Zion Williamson. So when you think about the Duke prodigies, they tend to do pretty well in the league. They go far. They end up getting coaching jobs, and there's a whole other can of worms that we can open up about the conspiracy of it all. But nevertheless, the point is, this is his alma mater. This is his alumni. This is the team that he is literally in the stands right now supporting. And if the NBA draft is rigged, then no, the Toronto Raptors will not get Cooper Flagg. Okay, let's flip it. So those are the two reasons that the Raptors will not get Cooper Flagg. The other reason is they have a 7.5% chance of getting Cooper Flagg, and literally there are 6 teams with better shot. Okay, what about the pros? Number one, the league has talked about global expansion. Putting your big marketable athletic four in Toronto is actually a big deal. Among the teams that are eligible to draft Cooper Flagg, Toronto is the largest market next to Chicago. So no, Philly is not a bigger market. No, Utah is not a bigger market. No, Charlotte is not a bigger market. None of these places are a bigger market. Cooper would be box office in Toronto. He would be a mega, mega, mega deal in Toronto. And every single time that the Toronto Raptors have ever had a legit A1 star, like a legit, he could be the face of the league type of star, whether that be Vince Carter circa 2001, 2003, whether that was Kawhi Leonard in 2019, they became immensely popular, not only globally, but also domestically, but also in America. Kawhi was a really big deal in America. He was a bigger deal in America as a Raptor than he ever was as a Spur. You can fact check me on that, but you'd be wrong to do so. Kawhi was a much bigger deal as a Raptor than he was as a Clipper. Toronto has proven, they have a proof of concept here. They can make and nurture superstars, something that I would hope that Scottie Barnes implicitly understands, that if he ever does get to that level, he will be a household name in the NBA. So Toronto is not some poverty franchise that this lunatic who has an international platform like Colin Cowherd is trying to make it out to be. I'll also give you a basketball reason. They're the best development team in that entire group, not named OKC, who does not have a shot at a top at the number one pick this year. Toronto has proven to develop every single player. Has Scottie Barnes exceeded expectations from what those expectations were at FSU? Yes. Has Jamal Shed, has Grady Dick, have all these players been better? What about Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett? Are they better today than they were as Knicks? I think they're much more complete basketball players. So I think when you consider the track record of development, infrastructure, stability, organizational stability, very quick to say that the Utah Jazz have this great general manager. Are the Raptors chopped liver? When's the last time Danny Ainge won a championship? Okay, I'll hold my breath. When's the last time Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster won a championship? Come on now. Come on now, Colin Cowherd. Did you wipe 2019 from your memory? Did you wipe out the fact that despite losing Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green, that this team was on pace to win more games the year after? That they moved from a 5th-ranked defense to a 2nd-ranked defense because of an undrafted guard named Fred VanVleet and a seldom talked about 23rd overall pick from Indiana named OG Anunoby, who just signed a max contract. Come on, man. The Raptors have been developing stars for a while. The Raptors have proven this for 14 years. 14 years. We are in year 14 of provable results. The Raptors are also 19-16 over their last 35 games. They play beautiful basketball. You know who else plays beautiful basketball? Cooper Flagg. Cooper Flagg plays beautiful basketball. They're a selfless team. You know who else is a selfless player? Cooper Flagg. They're a top 10 defense. You know who loves defense? Cooper fucking Flagg. So if I, as a player, as a person who had a business interest in Cooper Flagg developing correctly, being used correctly, blossoming, hitting his 99th percentile as a player, if I had that as my goal, then Toronto would definitely be one of my top 3 destinations for Cooper Flagg, but not for Colin Cowherd. Because for Colin Cowherd, the last time he watched a Raptors game was 2019. Remember how I said I wouldn't bet my house on someone beating Duke? Here's something I would bet my house on. I will bet my house that Colin Cowherd has not watched a complete Toronto Raptors game in the last 2 years. So when these people tell you that Scottie Barnes is overpaid, when these people tell you that Emmanuel Quickley is overpaid, when these people tell you that Brandon Ingram is nothing, when these people say this stuff, please understand you are listening to the opinions of people who literally have no idea. When Bill Simmons and Ryan Russillo get up there and say, easy, under 30 wins, Raptors, why is it so high? When they say this stuff, please understand they have no idea. They don't watch this team. They don't cover this team. They don't care about this team. And honestly, they probably wish this team didn't exist. But man, I'm going to tell you this. I don't think the draft is rigged, which means the Raptors do have a chance. The Raptors have a 7.5% chance to draft Cooper Flagg, which means there is a 7.5% chance that Colin Cowherd is going to get on his little podcast, on his little mic. He's going to dust it off, and he's going to cry because his favorite white prospect, probably in his lifetime, is going to be a Toronto Raptor. And you know what's funny? Cooper's from Maine. What city is closer to Maine than Toronto? Boston? Like, there aren't a lot. He's basically Canadian. Okay? So Come on now. I don't like the ignorance. I don't like the ignorance. Specifically, I think the Raptors do play a beautiful style of basketball. Did you see that play? Did you see that play? Let me I think I might have talked about it on X, but I might not have. Hang on. I definitely did. Hang on. Pull it up. This is the play. Look at this play by the Toronto Raptors and tell me that you are not proud of this team. Okay. Just look at it. Mobo passes to Yak. Yak set the screen. Mobo sets the screen. So pass sets the screen away. Yak handoff with Manuel quickly. Quickly goes downhill. Passes to the open man. Just AJ Lawson. He makes a quick swing to Jonathan Mobo, who quickly drives into the paint, does a turn, forces the help from a very bad defender in Yusuf Nurkic, who loses Jakob Poeltl, who dunks over 3 players. Do you know what that is? This beautiful basketball. You know what else that is? That is the type of basketball that Cooper Flagg would love to play. This is the best culture among all those losing teams, bar none. Bar none. You want to send him to Philly? You really want to send him to Philly? With everything that's gone wrong with the Philadelphia 76ers, with everything that's gone wrong with the injuries, with their development, with everything that's gone wrong with their culture, you want to send your favorite prospect, and don't even lie to me and say he's not your favorite prospect. You want to send your favorite prospect into a dumpster fire because it's an easier flight for you and you don't have to clear customs to go watch him. That's all it is. Everything we have heard since that Thaddeus Young bombshell interview, which set off a complete, Lou Williams is reacting to it. Rudy Gay is coming out of the woodwork to talk about customs. These people are idiots. These people are idiots. And that's all I'm going to say. They're idiots. They don't watch the Raptors. They're not evolved. They don't think about this. And personally, I would love to see Cooper on Toronto. I think he would transform the hell out of this defense. I think with Cooper Flagg, this is probably within a couple of years the best defense in the NBA. Yeah, it'd be fun. It'd be a lot of fun. And I think the only thing toxic about it would honestly be all the Cooper, Scottie, BI comparisons. Like, this is Cooper's team. No, this is Scottie's team. No, this is BI's team. Like, it would be nauseating. So, apart from that, I think it'd be great to have Cooper in Toronto. I think it'd be great for him. And I'm gonna stand on business. If the Raptors win that, draft lottery, I have so many receipts of me trying to speak this shit into existence. It's going to be like a movie. Okay. Now, let's talk about something more productive than lottery balls, which is specifically the Raptors need to make a trade. Now, I've been pretty down on Emmanuel Quickly lately, a little bit down, but I do want to point to something. He's been playing a lot better lately. Now, you can say it's the competition. You can also say he's only played 30 games this year. So it's worth noting that previously, when his numbers were a little bit down, it was like a 16-game sample size, and his numbers are just getting progressively better. His advanced analytics are getting much better. Now, I've decided to put him next to a player who has the worst advanced analytics, some of the worst advanced analytics among starting guards in the NBA, and that's Fred VanVleet. But he's literally doubling his box plus minus. He's clearing him on all the efficiency metrics. Obviously, Fred is still the better and better defender, better team defender, better one-on-one defender. He's better at everything defensively, but he's scoring more than him. He's assisting more than him, which I was shocked by, since Fred just really plays a ton of minutes and Emmanuel Quickly doesn't play a ton of minutes. And yeah, I say all of this to say that, let's be real. If you were going to sign Fred VanVleet, not only is he the older player, right? He is the ex-All-Star. He would have also been the more expensive player. So this is the comparable right now. Fred VanVleet is 100% looking for $30 million this offseason. So this is a player that's making $32 million on a flat contract. And I'll tell you one thing about Emmanuel Quickly that, amidst some of the struggles with the lead initiation stuff, which is getting better, it's getting a little bit better, amidst some of the struggles with the shooting, which is getting better, floating from 36% to 37% to 38% on the three-point shots, getting better. The only thing I'll say is I would love to see a little bit more defensive impact. I would love to see him get a little bit more composed with the basketball. I'm not sure I necessarily want to trade him, but I do think that, his trade value is not nearly in the gutter the way some people think it is. Like, I think he's a neutral asset. I don't think he's an overwhelmingly positive asset. An example of that would be someone like Malik Monk or Austin Reeves, where it's like, oh, we can get multiple firsts for him because he's so discounted. No, I just think he's a fair contract. I think there's a team out there that could look at Emmanuel quickly and say, yeah, we have a contract on our books that we would definitely trade for that. It's not a contract you're going to get first round picks for, though. So my view on this is such. I think the Raptors need a second first round pick in this draft, and I want one badly. I don't know what we need to trade to get it. And there's a reason that I want it so badly. Now, here's the thing. The Raptors have invested an entire year into developing Jacoby Walter. They've invested 2 years into developing Grady Dick. They've invested 1.5 years into developing Ochai Agbaji. They've spent a year with all these rookies, Jamal Shed, Jamison Battle, etc. Now, a lot of us get attached to these players because they play for our team, and we have visions, hypothesis of what they'll become, but very rarely does the player that starts out with the team end up staying with the team long term. I mean, there's always going to be, a chance that somebody has to move. Norman Powell eventually moved. Jonas Valanciunas eventually moved. DeMar DeRozan, one of the, key components of We the North, he moved on. And the important thing here is asset management. For a team that is salary top heavy, largely due to the contracts of 5 players, it's their starting lineup. The Raptors are investing a lot of money in their starting lineup, and they're about to get a lot more expensive because Brandon Ingram's deal, now is on your books. Scottie Barnes' deal goes from 10 million to 40 million, almost 40 million next year. And that's a huge pay jump. And it's not just going to be made up by, oh, we lost, this contract and the salary cap went up a little bit. No, you're going to be very squeezed on the back end of your roster. And that's where a late first that you actually hit on, that's where that pays dividends. That pick that you traded for Thaddeus Young would have been a great deal. Instead, you traded for Thaddeus Young on expiring and paid $8 million. Look at what Christian Brown and players like Nikola Jovic make. They make $2-3 million a year, and they're on team control for 7 years because after the 4-year period, they're restricted free agents and you can sign them to whatever. So these deals are very important. And I think that this draft has an all-star level player that's going to be picked between 15 and 30. And I think the Raptors can find him. And I'm not saying this guy's going to be an all-star, but there's some players we need to talk about. So let's just pull up that mock draft and let's just briefly discuss some players that I have some deeper thoughts on now that I've watched even more of them. Okay. So right now, this mock draft, according to NBA Draft Room, is breaking out as Cooper, Dylan, Ace, VJ, Trey, Jeremiah Fears, Kasparis Yakichonis. I don't agree with this at all. I firmly think Derek Queen and Khaman Malauch have played themselves into top 7 contention. But here, for whatever reason, maybe Kasparis, maybe, Yegor Demon have really great workouts and people just find themselves really impressed with them. I don't think that's going to happen. Ace and Newell, very, very productive. I think a lot of people like him. I have some thoughts about some of these prospects, and I want to get into them. And the number one player that I want to talk about is Con Knipple. Now, I promised that after March Madness, I'm going to do my own mock draft big board. And I got to tell you, if I'd done it before March Madness, Con Knipple would be probably 13th or 14th on my board. Right now, he's 100% in the top 10. I'm putting him over players that I had no idea I could ever think about putting him over. It's not because he has more upside. It's just because his floor is so incredibly high. Okay, so that's one thing. The second player that I am just getting really high on, and I'm very curious to see how he's going to do, is Jace Richardson. Analytics darling. Really just, he's not, some people suspect that he's closer to 6'2". It'll really come down to the measurements. He's not a pure point guard. He's a combo guard, but he gets to the rim. He is a smooth shot maker. I really like him. I'm pretty sure I would, prior to this process, prior to watching him as much as I have, I probably would have put him around 16th, 17th, 18th on my board. Right now, he's floating closer to late lottery. Liam McNeely is fine right here. Will Riley's fine right here. Nolan Traore is one player that I'm going to dig into more over the next week. So after tomorrow's games, we'll have a little bit of a break. I'm going to dig into like maybe 8 hours of Nolan Traore games because I'm very curious to see if that might be one of those players that's going to slip a little bit, that maybe the Raptors can sort of change his approach. Okay, Hugo Gonzalez is another player that I think could be picked in this range for sure. JT Toppin, I'm just so impressed by. I think his draft stock probably fell today, despite playing a very commendable game where I think he was tough as nails. Missing 0 for 5. He's come a long way as a free throw shooter. He went from 57% last year to about 70% this year, but finishing your season on an 0 for 5 is always going to leave scouts with a very, very sour taste in their mouth. At the end of the day, it's just free throws. Players miss back-to-back free throws. Players miss free throws all the time. Nobody is projecting him to be some great shooter, but I just love the toughness that he plays with, and I would probably have him a little bit higher than 23 on my board right now. I like his athletic tools. Ben Saraf is another player that I think he could actually play himself into late lottery contention. His ball skills are incredible, and his shot creation is really, really good. The one player I really want to talk about right now, there's one of 3 players I want to talk about, is Thomas Sorber. I really want to talk about Thomas Sorber. Let's see who else I want to talk about. So Thomas Sorber is one. Let me just open that up as a new window. I don't want to talk about Noah Penda yet. I don't want to talk about Nick Clifford yet. Let's see who else I want to talk about. I want to talk about Ben Stirtz. Yes. And I want to talk about Walter Clayton Jr. So those are the 3 players. Okay. So let's talk about these players. And let's start with Thomas Sorber, the Georgetown Hoyas center who ended up ending his season having foot surgery after about 24 games, but really interesting player. Now, I love everything about this guy. Okay. His defense is awesome. His rebounding, his motor, his improvement. I mean, he was a 4-star recruit, and he has played himself right into lottery contention, which means that, I mean, he's bulked up huge. If you watch his high school tape, he is like 220. And the thing that I don't like about him, at least at the college level, is how he moves. I really hate his movement patterns. He's kind of lumbering, slow a little bit, and that just wasn't there at the college level. So, sorry, at the high school level, he felt a lot more fluid. So I feel like this might be a player who needs to actually tone down a little bit because I feel like he put on a lot of bad weight. Maybe he seems really solid, but again, when you watch him, grade 11, grade 12, he doesn't feel nearly as bulky and as clunky. Like he feels a little bit more fluid, a little bit more bursty. And sometimes, that can overshadow, like the eye test can kind of overshadow what is actually happening. And what is actually happening is you have an excellent passer who has maybe not the greatest shooting upside. That would be like a huge weakness. Great rebounder, really active defender, has really good hands on the perimeter, can really, bother and understands angles very well, has a real love for the game. I always ask myself the question with bigger players, specifically 7-footers and guys who are close to 7 feet. Do you love the game or did someone push you into this? Because a lot of 7-footers don't really give a shit about this game. It feels like, judging on 7 or 8 interviews that I've watched of him, he really just loves the game. His brother plays the game. I think his father, the story is very compelling. So again, the personality is compelling. Again, I'm a big feel guy. I'm a big person, big believer in watching your body language when you're on the court. And he just smiles. Like he smiles through bad moments, good moments. He feels like a very uplifting type of player. So if this is a player that maybe like OG Anunoby, he slips, right? Some people have concerns, the injury. I don't know if he's going to be ready in time for workouts. He might even go back to Georgetown. I don't think he should. But if his draft stock slips a little bit, this might be the player that if you end up going Con Knipple or something like that with the 7th pick, this might be the guy that you can get at 21, right? Kind of like your OG Anunoby, right? Not the most fluid mover, and I'm never going to assume that he's going to be a fluid mover. But if the jump shot can come around at all, he is a 10-year pro and a very productive role player in the NBA. Could he be more than that? Possibly. But in Darko's system, his passing is very underrated, and his defense, when you combine passing, defense, rim protection is good. Not great. He's not, skying to the heavens to block shots, but he'll be a productive defender at the NBA level. I'm positive. He'll be a productive rebounder, a productive defender, and a productive passer. And he's a good screener already. Like, he's really understood those angles on screens. And so I really like him. So that's the first player that I feel that maybe this is why the Toronto Raptors need to target a second first round pick. Now, second is a little bit more debatable, and the third will be even more debatable. And I don't know if Ben Stirtz is going to be a first round pick, or maybe this might be a matter of a player just falling to the second round exactly where the Raptors are picking, and then boom, you get it. There's some theory on this. The Raptors don't have a third string point guard. Now, if you think Scottie Barnes is a point guard, then they do have a third string point guard. But if you think of Scottie more as a wing going into next year, if you think of RJ as a wing, then Emmanuel Quickley is the lead guard. Jamal Shed is the backup point guard, and you don't really have a third string point guard. And I do think a third string point guard is very important, because in those games without Emmanuel Quickley, you need someone to step up in that rotation. It can be Scottie. Of course, it can be Scottie. And I personally believe that Scottie's most natural position is point. But seeing him as a point forward works perfectly fine. However, that third string point guard should be a shooter. I am perfectly firm on this. I want a third string point guard who can guard, point, be a little bit big for their position. So not necessarily like a 5'11", 6 foot, 5'7" Marquise Noel. We're not going there. We talk about a guy who can sort of guard the position, be a little bit plus size for his position, set good screens for his position, is smart for that position. And I keep thinking about Bennett Stirtz. And I was impressed with what I saw from him at Drake. I watched 4 games from him this year, which is not enough to make a completely educated guess. And then that's prior to the tournament. And then I watched the tournament games with him. And I just found him to be really one of those types of prospects that the Raptors really like. So, Jonathan Mobo had a very similar story, went from JUCO to, lower division, and then kind of a late bloomer, right? The Raptors tend to like these guys. They like their stories. They like the work ethic, the hustle. Fred VanVleet was a little bit of a late bloomer in theory, if you think about it, going from undrafted. Jameson Battle's another one, kind of flung around. So they like these guys. I don't think Bennett Stirtz is ever going to go undrafted or just fall out of the draft or anything like that. But he has decent size, right? I don't know what his wingspan's going to measure in. He's probably going to measure 6'3", barefoot, 6'4" in shoes. But he can hit, man. He can hit those shots. He's a really good shooter, really smart player. Like, I think about, high field players. This is one of those high field players in this game who just understands angles, understands how to execute the pick and roll, just really understands how to play off the ball. Again, stuff that you really hope Jeremiah Fears figures this shit out. This guy has it. This guy has it already. And so, yeah, don't let the athleticism fool you too much. He is a pretty good athlete. He transferred from D2 to D1, followed his coach up a level. And honestly, I think he probably should have been an All-American this year. I don't know if he was an All-American this year, but he played like an All-American for Drake this year. So I was very impressed with him. Now, the third player is a player that y'all should be very familiar with, especially if you watched college basketball today, and that is Florida guard Walter Clayton Jr. So a little bit of a combo guard, but I'm going to tell you something that really stood out with him and something that the Raptors really like, and that is guards who can set screens. Now, Ochai can set screens. This is actually going to lead into a completely different conversation as well, but let's stay on this one for a second. I think his winning composure is going to stick out to the Raptors. The Raptors have already shown that they really love Jamal Shed for the exact same reasons. Clayton is a lot bigger than Shed. I think they could actually play together in certain lineups. Clayton has some off-ball like goodness. He just defensively and offensively, he does a lot of good stuff off the ball. And I just really like his icy demeanor when it comes to shot making. You know what I mean? Like, he's cool as a cucumber. He gets to the line. He hits the shots. He has a little bit of Fred VanVleet in him. He really does. Except unlike Fred VanVleet, he doesn't look like an Oompa Loompa out there. Like, he looks legit 6'2", 6'3". He might measure out a little bit taller. And again, the combo guard thing throws some people off. I believe that if anyone can actually turn this guy into a full-time actual point guard, it is Darko Rajakovic. Like, he's a guard whisperer. So again, at the absolute end of the first round, there are some teams that are looking to shed picks because maybe they don't want to pay those. I'm going to say picks 25 to 29. One of those picks is almost always available for a future second or a pair of future seconds. Now, the Raptors did grab a future second. They've grabbed a bunch of future seconds. I would be curious if a deal like this, so Portland second plus Lakers future second, could get the Raptors a super late first. Again, there are benefits to being in the second round. You don't have to commit the money. You can, put the person on a two-way. There's a lot more flexibility, or you can literally sign them to the same contract if you really want to. There's a little bit more contract flexibility with those early second round picks than there are with those late first round picks, which is why, sometimes a lot of really good players go in that late first round range. And I have a feeling that Walter Clayton Jr., after this run that he's been on with Florida, especially if they win the national championship, is probably going to be one of those players. I would love to take a gamble on him, man. I really would. Now, talk about something else. Now, I stumbled across a discussion, which, to some people probably wouldn't be a discussion at all, which is would you trade Scottie Barnes right now for Giannis Antetokounmpo if Antetokounmpo wants out this offseason? There's been some rumblings that maybe he's not super thrilled about, everything that's happening in Milwaukee. There's always been a tie from Masai Ujiri to Giannis. And so people ask, would you offer your 23, soon to be 24-year-old all-star for a former league MVP and an NBA champion in Giannis Antetokounmpo? And I was curious, to see what the response was. So I looked it up on Real GM, and I want to read some of those responses because I thought it was very interesting. Billy saying, hell no. Well, you would be in the minority in terms of this. So hang on, let me just pull this up here. So this is the Real GM forum where nothing productive ever happens in terms of basketball. But here's the poll. 77% said yes, 19% said no, and 4% said not sure. The rationale was, if the premise is Scottie for Giannis, of course you take Giannis, for sure. Phew, this person says, phew, I was honestly scared most Raptor fans would say no. That's why you're scared? Okay. Giannis is only 30 in offseason. Got to do it. Giannis is on another level compared to Scottie. Giannis is a different player than someone like Dame or even Durant in that he can dominate both sides of the floor. This is an easy yes. You probably get 3-4 more years of elite play from Giannis. Depends on the picks. I'd be against trading all of them. So this person thinks that it would be Scottie plus like 4 picks for Giannis. Okay. A few things. Today I was listening to Cho with Cho, and someone called in and said, I don't think Giannis is a top 3 player because of XYZ reason. And it was a fascinating discussion because Cho is a huge Tatum guy. And this caller actually put Tatum over Giannis. Now, I want to point out some things that I think numbers sort of boggle the mind and really get in people's way of understanding basketball. Basketball is a team sport. So the fact that Jason Tatum is able to space for his teammates, set screens for his teammates, play so many different positions, versatility is a big thing. What he does every night allows his teammates to do what they do. And what Giannis does allows his teammates to do what they do. Giannis is a great defender. Absolutely. In isolation, Giannis is a great defender. He's a great driver of offense. He's a very good passer. He's become a much better mid-range scorer. There's so many things that Giannis does that we can only dream that Scottie will be able to do. But there's a lot of things that Scottie already does that are so much better than Giannis. Yes, he's not a better rebounder than Giannis, but he's not that far off. He's much younger than Giannis. He's much cheaper than Giannis. He's less injury prone than Giannis. He's on the right side of 26 instead of the wrong side of 30. That's part of it. He's a much better screen setter than Giannis. He's a much better passer than Giannis. And if you're asking me offensively, he has a chance to be much more dynamic than Giannis too. But it doesn't stop some people from thinking, but Giannis is so much better. Of course he's better. Of course he's better. We can only dream that Scottie will ever touch the level that Giannis is playing at right now. But this is the same thing as trying to trade rookie Scottie Barnes for Kevin Durant. Yes, KD is better. How long will he be better? How much longer will he be better for? Does it really launch you into contention? Does a team of Brandon Ingram, Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, and Giannis Antetokounmpo give you a contention window? Yeah, it does. Provided Giannis stays healthy. Yes. Does Giannis and RJ work? Does Giannis and Jakob work? Your entire roster doesn't work around Giannis. You need shooters. Now I'll ask you one question. If I'm the Milwaukee Bucks, I make this trade in a heartbeat. I'll tell you why. Scottie and Dame is a dream come true. If Damian Lillard actually, manages to get out of this blood clot thing, the one thing that makes the Damian Lillard and Giannis pick and roll not work is Giannis's unwillingness to do anything without the basketball. He's not a good screen setter. Has every tool to be a great screen setter. He's not the greatest cutter. He's not the smartest basketball player. That is 100% just my opinion from watching Giannis for the last 8 years. Big fan, not the smartest basketball player. Just makes a lot of those silly reads. Doesn't really get every nuance of the game. Seems like a fantastic leader. Seems like, a tremendous presence in the locker room. But Scottie is, if we had to run a test of basketball IQ, I think Scottie is the higher IQ player, defensively and offensively. And so I think that matters. I think that it matters. And I think Scottie's about to take a really big step. Terrence Davis saying Giannis is a 7-foot Westbrook. I think that's a pretty fair comparison. Yeah, he has a lot of Westbrook in him. And so, when people look at the numbers, 30 points, 11 rebounds, 12 rebounds, they say, look at what he's doing. And what they don't realize is his team context. It's the same issue I had with Hakeem Olajuwon. Is Hakeem Olajuwon one of the 5 greatest players of all time? For me, no. No, not at all. Tim Duncan's much better. Because Tim Duncan allowed other people to do things that Hakeem did not. Duncan's passing, screen setting, and overall awareness of the court and understanding different coverages, scaling back his role, his shooting, all of these things, it just changed everything. This is why I put Arvydas Sabonis so high up there, because Arvydas was the same way. Jokic is the same way, right? The other day, there was a discussion on the panel where they were discussing Luka Doncic's inability to cut. And someone brought up the fact that he's too fat, too slow, and too minivan-esque to cut. This is simply not the case. Luka is a bad cutter because he doesn't cut, because he doesn't know how to cut, doesn't know when to cut, or just simply doesn't want to cut. It doesn't matter. It's the same argument with Brandon Ingram. He's not a good cutter. Why? Because he doesn't do it. He doesn't do it. He doesn't do it. And when he does it, he doesn't do it well. It's just that simple. Scottie's a great cutter. There's a lot of things that don't show up in the box score. One of them is versatility. How many different styles of basketball, defensively and offensively, can I play with you on the court? How landlocked am I into playing drop coverage with one big over another big? Now, again, if you're committing to that big because he is a 99th percentile drop coverage big, well, then I understand that you have to pick. But what would you rather have, a 99th percentile drop big or a 98th percentile drop big who's also a 96th percentile switch big? I think I'll roll my dice with the slightly lower, outcome with the more versatility. The Raptors value versatility. Of course they value versatility. They value upside. They value versatility. They value these things. Because when you get into a playoff series, teams are going to make you do things that you don't want to do. Look at what happened today in the game that we watched between Alabama and Duke. Duke is without their defensive coordinator right now because he's in the transfer portal. Yes, coaches are also in the transfer portal right now. So what they did was they looked at the tape probably of BYU and how they covered Alabama and said, we're not going to do that. And then they forced them to do something else. And the minute they forced them to do something else, it was over. It's the same thing in the playoffs. Now, give me a W if you ended up watching the Detroit Pistons smack the shit out of the Cleveland Cavaliers yesterday. Whether you watched it with us on playback or whether you watched it by yourself, or whether you read up the box score, are you aware of that game? They did that without Cade Cunningham. How? Why? Because defense travels, man. And how the Detroit Pistons can defend is really not something that you can solve on the fly. Maybe in a 7-game series, you'll be able to solve it. maybe you'll be able to solve Cade Cunningham offensively in a 7-game series. We'll wait. We'll see. That's why the playoffs are the great exposure. But when you think about it from the position of Jason Tatum versus Giannis Antetokounmpo, you can play 800 styles with Tatum. You can't play 800 styles with Giannis. Whether it be defensively or offensively, you're locked into Giannis ball. It's the same thing with Luka. Frankly, it's the same thing with Jokic. That's what makes Shea so valuable. Shea and Tatum are a lot more versatile in terms of the positions they can guard and the positions they can play offensively. Now, Tatum might be among that group. He might be the most portable player in that group. But also, he's also the least carry the offense to 50 points player in that group, right? Carry the load of producing all my team's offense. And somehow, the NBA narrative among fans has swung towards the player who can carry everything. Well, okay, so I have a question for you. Why is it that this fan base specifically, or the NBA fan base in large, do not value a player like Scottie Barnes, who is on the one side anchoring your defense and on the other side pretty much stabilizing your offense? Why? Because he can't shoot. But why does Giannis not get any, he can't shoot. He's a terrible free throw shooter. At least Scottie makes his free throws. I think people lack patience, maybe. I think people need to see Scottie in a winning context. But I'll tell you this. Last year, my big thing with Cade Cunningham, 2 criticisms. And trust me, I'm not going to turn this into a Cade slander pod because I've moved on. My 2 big criticisms were the Detroit Pistons had a better record without him than with him, which I thought was a convincing argument, because if you are supposedly the only good thing on your team, I would assume that team would be worse without you, and they weren't. And the second thing was specifically his analytics compared to his draft class, which specifically pointed to the fact that he was inefficient, turnover prone, and did not do a very good job of creating efficient offense at the rim. I really care about paint touches when I'm talking about lead initiators and scores, and Cade simply didn't get into the paint and finish well enough for my liking. So my big beef was I felt his teammates were being thrown under the bus for something that I felt he was actually a part of the problem. And this year, every single time I've seen the Pistons without Cade Cunningham, they've been beating the shit out of a team. Every single time. The game that he got fouled out, if you recall, where, he got 2 technicals or something like that and they tossed him out, they made a huge comeback. They were down big. They made a huge comeback. And then against the Cleveland Cavaliers, they ended up winning convincingly and nearly folding and then coming back again and whooping the Cleveland Cavaliers. They did a great job defensively. Are they a better defensive team without Cade? Yeah. But also, Cade forces them to play a certain way offensively. And when he's not on the court, as much as you do value the talent and the stability and the ability that he can handle 32, 33, 34% load, there's also like a freeing ability to play without him, because guys get more comfortable. They get the ball in their hands a little bit more. Maybe they get a little bit more into rhythm. Guys like Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr., Dennis Schroeder, all these other guys who are perfectly productive and capable of, leading usage for a quarter. Maybe they're not on the level of talent of Cade, but the portability. And so I ask you, if we do a checklist argument for Cade versus Scottie, or Scottie versus Evan Mobley, how many boxes does Scottie check that don't usually count for things? Does Scottie check the box for the off-ball awareness, the screen setting, the defensive versatility? How many different roles he can play defensively? What about connectivity? All these things matter. So I think Scottie's a hella underrated player. I'm glad to see that the same archetype in Cooper Flagg, who's a little bit more flashy, of course, in the marketing of going to Duke and stuff, is not getting underrated. It gives me hope for basketball that, basketball fans are starting to value the right shit. But this, I'll agree with you, and it's funny, my favorite player in college basketball, men or women, is actually Paige Beckers. And it's funny because Paige is an extremely selfless player. She doesn't put up like the greatest numbers in the world. She doesn't break scoring records very often. And it was ironic because going into the fourth quarter, UConn was up marginally. And Gino Auriemma, the coach for the UConn Huskies, who has coached some of the greatest women in college basketball history, whether we're talking Breanna Stewart, whether we're talking a lot of players. Okay. Nafisa Collier. Like, there's so many great players in UConn history that you can go right back to friggin' Diana Taurasi. Like, it's crazy. The list of UConn Husky alumni on the female side is like, it is like the most dominant college basketball program ever for a female side. So Paige is just another chapter in that book. But she's my favorite player in all of college basketball. Love her. Loved her since high school. Loved her right through to now. And at the fourth quarter interview, Gino Auriemma says to the sideline reporter, I just want her to score. I just want her to be more assertive. There's times when she catches the ball and she's not looking to score, and the defense knows she's not looking to score. Maybe you can talk to her. I want her to score. And she proceeds to score 15 straight points to start the fourth quarter and puts her team up for good. And it just reminded you that Paige can do whatever the hell she wants. She chooses to set up her teammates because she's not a selfish player. And it's ironic because Paige and Scottie are really close. They're really close. They go way back. They go way back to Team USA stuff. So they're very similar in that way. Scottie's like that. But when it's time to take over a game, how many times have we seen Scottie put up like 6, 10, 12, 15, 18, 19 points in the fourth quarter? He can do it. He can do it. He's that singular focus. He can do it. He's not going to go out there and try to break scoring records. He's not going to do that because he's a very, very team first person, and he's getting better at it. Do you know what I mean? If you look at Scottie Barnes' like overall shot volume, it's going up in steps. You say that he's not assertive enough, and I hear you. There are certain segments of the game where he kind of just floats, but take a look at this. Again, per 100 possessions, Scottie Barnes. We've gone from 17.8 to 18.8 to 21.7 to 23.7 field goal attempts per 100 possessions. If you think that only applies to field goals, take a look at the free throw attempt rate. 4.1, 4.5, 5.8, 7.0. We are getting more and more volume. It's going up every single year. Okay. And the advanced analytics, while they may not look super dominant right now at 2.6 box plus minus, that's still very comfortably in roughly all-star territory for back-to-back years. And his defensive impact per EPM is really starting to float into very, very high territories. In fact, I actually want to take a look at it right now while I have y'all here, because I haven't looked at it in a while, and I would like to see how Scottie's doing. So here, let me just sort here for defensive. There we go. Right there, baby. So these are the defenders that are above Scottie Barnes in terms of defensive EPM. Are you ready? Because it's a very elite list. Alex Caruso, Ausar Thompson, Chris Dunn, Victor Wembanyama, Chet Holmgren, Amen Thompson, Jalen Williams, Dyson Daniels, Ivica Zubac, Paul Reed, Draymond Green, Jonathan Isaac, Isaiah Hartenstein. That's it. Okay. Among the players, by the way, who will actually qualify for NBA awards, Wemby does not qualify. Chris Dunn doesn't qualify because of minutes. Chet Holmgren doesn't qualify because of games played. Jonathan Isaac does not qualify because of minutes played. Draymond Green might not qualify. I'm not sure if he's going to make that cutoff. Paul Reed definitely does not qualify. Scottie Barnes, Alex Caruso does not qualify. So really, Ausar Thompson does not qualify. So the players that qualify for all defense are Chris Dunn, Amen Thompson, Dyson Daniels, probably Jalen Williams if he comes back before the season ends, Ivica Zubac, Draymond Green. Isaiah Hartenstein does not qualify. Scottie Barnes. Scottie Barnes is a second team all defense if they care about the analytics at all. And believe me, defensive EPM is about as evolved as you get with this stat. So look, this is what he's doing for you defensively. Is he doing very much for you offensively right now? No, but it's a work in progress. It will get better. I am positive of it. And when it gets better, that defense is going to hold up. and he'll be basically your Giannis 2.0, except he'll be able to make his free throws, hopefully make more threes, be a lot more dynamic with the basketball, and will be a much better screener. Maybe he won't necessarily be the athletic freak that Giannis is. Maybe he doesn't need to be because he thinks the game's so much better. So overall, yeah, I understand there's a gap between these two players, and that gap will remain next year and probably the year after that. But the year after that, Scottie will be 26 and Giannis will be 34, at which point you will regret this trade immensely. So, yeah, that's where I'm at on that. I agree Scottie should be more selfish. Look, here's the thing. Basketball is a team sport. Scottie understands this. He's always understand this. He's always understood this. And all of my favorite players, whether that be Rasheed Wallace, Scottie Barnes, Paige Beckers, they're all accused of not being assertive enough. You know, you would think if Rasheed Wallace ever wanted to chase stats, Kevin Garnett, you know, if he wanted to chase stats, Tim Duncan, if he wanted to chase stats, these players would honestly be like 30-point per game scores. They never were. That's not their game. That's not who they wanted to be. Bill Russell wasn't a 30-point per game scorer. All my favorite players like this, with the exception of Michael Jordan. The thing is that in the age of fantasy sports and sports betting, the numbers have never mattered less than they do today because those numbers are costing you money. If you bet plus 19.5 for Paige Beckers and she doesn't take a shot for a whole quarter, you're going to hate Paige Beckers. If you bet the plus 18.5 on Scottie Barnes to hit 20 points and you see how easily he hit his first 16 points and then he just stops shooting, you're going to hate him. And that's the truth. Sports betting skews how you view sports. It's just the truth. It's how it works. So with the advance of sports betting, you're going to see players like Giannis Antetokounmpo consistently be overrated. Domantas Sabonis consistently be overrated because they consistently hit very, very big numbers on the box score. And I don't know. Has there ever been an option to take the plus 6 screen assists, plus 2 hockey assists? I don't think sports books cover that shit. So that's really what it. Carvin saying DPOY qualify for Supermax. Yes, the DPOY does qualify for the Supermax. Scottie is probably not going to win Defensive Player of the Year because the Raptors are not good enough for him to win Defensive Player of the Year. Unfortunately, but I think he has taken his defense to a completely different level, and I would not be, if I had a vote, which I don't, he would be first team all defense. He would be first team all defense or second team all defense if I had a vote. I understand the argument is hard to make, but unfortunately, because of injuries, I think he just makes it. I don't think he's a top 10 defender in the NBA, but I don't think he's that far off. I think he might be like 13th or 14th. Entertainer Cliff saying, did you see SGA's dad make an appearance on Gil's Arena podcast? No, I did not. Raptors fumbling their pick and will say after the lottery, see, tanking don't work. I don't think that's true. If the Raptors get Cooper, do you think Scottie's expendable? Hell no. Mel saying, I wouldn't mind Boucher for the vet minimum. He brings length. I don't think anyone would mind Chris Boucher for the vet minimum. I don't think he's coming back from the vet minimum. But yeah. Okay, let's get some super chats here real quick. Military Man saying, Raptors next year will be scary. And does Pendants let in 15 and up because I'm 15? Yeah. So unless it's a movie with, you know, an R rating or something like that, yeah, we have a ton of people who are 14, 15, 16 that do come to Pendants. So definitely, you know, hit me up next year and maybe we can get you some tickets. Also, I think it's worth mentioning that for Canada Film Day on April 16th, we are doing a special screening of the film Copenhagen it's one of the greatest Canadian films, in my opinion. And we are doing a special screening of it. It is free. So the tickets for that will go up tomorrow on Film Freeway. Definitely cop a pair if you would like. It's a great film. It is the 11-year anniversary of that film's release. So it'll be fun. KP saying, who goes first, AJ or Cooper, if in the same draft? Now, it really depends on who has the pick. If I had the pick, it would probably be AJ. But if I don't have the pick and, you know, somebody who's just thinking about this from a marketing perspective has a pick, maybe Cooper goes first. I think AJ's better. That's just my view on it. Value his shot creation and his handle and his size a little bit more. I think he's bigger and he's better. He's not quite the defender that Cooper is, but I think he could be so much better offensively than Cooper is. So we'll see. We'll see. AJ will have his chance next year with BYU. We'll see if Jaeger Demon will be joining him or if Jaeger Demon comes out for the draft. But yes, we are an hour and 24 minutes into this live. I want to thank all 280 people who were in here at one point, 213 of you that remain. Thank you for checking this one out. I hope you got something from it. I hope, the discussion was good. And yeah, I was listening back to yesterday's live and I was saying a lot. I pretty much cut out ums and ers from my vernacular completely. But for some reason, now, like over the last couple of days, I've been staggering my speech a little bit. So I need to get back on my game, bro. And it is worth noting that I will be on playback tonight, Sunday night, with Jordan. So to those of you who follow the panel, Jordan, shout outs to Drenchman Sports. He and I will be covering the Detroit Pistons tomorrow night, which means the Raptors postgame will also be delayed. We'll also mention that my PCL debate is on Monday, and I have not done one iota of preparation, so I got to get to that. Okay, so I'll talk to y'all later. So again, tomorrow night, playback, Monday night, PCL. Don't know when I'm going to be on the panel next. Make a video on low. No, thank you. Season almost over. 1, if you happy. 2, if you sad. I'll give you a 1. I'm happy. I don't feel like... I'll say this last thing. This fan base sucks at times. Like, it really sucks. Because they don't always appreciate what's staring at them right in the face. Fan engagement was so much higher for that toxic-ass team with Fred VanVleet and Nick Nurse than it is today for this exceptionally beautiful basketball team that is playing just incredible basketball, has this incredible culture. And I got to tell you, as a person who often is on American platforms and is talking about this team, I've never been prouder of the Raptors, maybe since 2019, than I am today. And I understand the record is not great or whatever, but I stand behind the basketball process and also the basketball philosophy and the development that this team has. And so, again, it's about judging the process. It's not necessarily about judging the results. And I feel too many fans are just obsessed with the results. They're very short-term thinkers. When it was presented, moving on from Pascal Siakam because of financial implications, almost every single person rebuked that and said, no, how could you possibly do that? And then, of course, it's resulted basically in Brandon Ingram, a player who is roughly equal to Pascal Siakam, plus Jacoby Walter. And now maybe people feel a little bit differently about that. Maybe. It also resulted in Ochai Agbaji. Let's not forget that. So Ochai plus Jacoby plus Brandon Ingram or Pascal Siakam. What would you rather have, right? Again, people don't think. Scottie Barnes, Kevin Durant trade. Everyone wanted to make that trade. Well, a lot of people wanted to make that trade. Scottie Barnes versus Jalen Suggs in the draft. People wanted to pick Jalen Suggs. And even Darko Rajakovic, like the first 3 months of Darko, as I continuously said, wait, look at what he's doing. It's so great. He's changing the culture. People are just like, no, Nick Nurse is better. Can't believe we lost Nick Nurse for this bum. So it's, again, the common Raptor fan is a lunatic. I love this community because you're not common Raptor fans. You are the specific and very special Raptor fans that see the long-term vision. So I thank you for that. Yeah. Rob, what you taking about Fred is box office. What I'm talking about, Fred, you mean? Cooper easily fits our team and we become huge. Cooper will be a bust. You're certainly entitled to that opinion. Some people will hold that opinion until they're blue in the face, but I don't think he's going to be a bust. I think he can succeed in about 55 different ways, and one of those ways is a superstar, but most of those other ways are still an all-star or at least a highly... If I told you he's a very, very, very rich man's Aaron Gordon, and that's the best that he ever becomes, that's still probably an all-star. You got to think about that. Yeah. All right. Talk to y'all later. Have a great one. Enjoy the rest of March Madness tomorrow. I'll catch y'all, some of y'all, on playback tomorrow.